lot has been said in the past couple of years about whether video games count as art. Many examples have been presented for against, but I don't think there's a better example for video games as art than Halo Combat Evolved. I first played the game long after Halo 2 had been released. That first experience of playing Halo was unlike anything I'd ever had. It left such an impact on me that I have made it a tradition to return to the game and replay it multiple times a year. Sometimes I'm just looking for fun and play it on Heroic. Other times I'm looking for a challenge and play it on Legendary. And once I thought I was good enough to beat it on Lasso. I wasn't. Regardless, this game means a lot to many people, and even more to me. One sad reality is that it sometimes gets overshadowed by its sequels. And sure, they may have better graphics and multiplayer and, well, everything else, but you just can't beat the original. The modern gaming scene doesn't appreciate simplicity as much as they should. Halo CE's minimalism is one of the things that makes it so spectacular. It doesn't need over-the-top textures to assault your eyes or 15 guns that all do the same thing. The number and types of enemies, the balance of the weapons, the construction of the beautifully simplified environments that they inhabit, everything is near perfection. One thing I hold in very high regard is the art direction. A lot of game companies, even today, try to pursue the most photorealistic graphics possible on modern systems. There's nothing wrong with this pursuit, but when you compare a game like Uncharted to a game like Halo 3, both of which came out the same year, the difference between the game that pursues art direction over graphical fidelity is clear. I think most people today would say Halo looks dated regardless, and perhaps I'm just blinded by nostalgia, but I still think it has so much clarity that it holds up, for the most part, and the best old games always do. Sometimes the older games manage to do things better than a lot of games today. Halo's excellent and somewhat subtle storytelling heavily contrasts against the modern era where video games often have extensively long cutscenes with abhorrent Maiden Butler style exposition. Sure, Halo has cutscenes that tell you the base of the story, but a lot of the story is actually told via dialogue during the actual missions, and even more so in the environment. Sometimes you'll find a dead body that's supposed to serve simply as a weapon stash, but there's clearly a story on how they got there. Even enemy spawns can sometimes further the storytelling. For example, on 2 Betrayals, you get to see how the Covenant are fighting the Flood in order to defend the control room. Not even to mention the impact of introducing the Flood as an enemy halfway through the campaign. Even here, Halo is light on the exposition and focuses heavily on allowing the environment to tell the story. It's exactly that slow approach that tells you everything you need to know about the Flood before they're finally explained 2 missions later. Halo knows what to tell you and what to keep from you. It understands that sometimes the most interesting elements are those shrouded in mystery. I think that's lost in a lot of modern productions, which seek to flesh out every element of their stories down to the last minute detail. All of this not even to mention perhaps the most famous part of Halo's artistry, the music. Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore's exceptional score laid the groundwork for what video game music could achieve, and set a bar so high that many games still today fail to reach it. And so often forgotten is their other work on the game. The voice acting may sound slightly comical to our ears today, but at the time it was really some of the best that had ever been put into a video game. There's a reason that it still holds up decently well compared to many of the other games that came out a few years before, or even a few years after. There are actually a lot of amazing things in Combat Evolved that often get overlooked. Combat dialogue, for example, may have not originated from this game, but it certainly had a massive impact and would become a mainstay for most first-person shooter franchises. Combat Evolved may not have introduced all these game design ideas, but to me it was the perfect combination. The ingredients may have already existed, but Bungie put them together into a scrumptious meal, and that's what makes Halo CE feel so complete, even compared to first-person shooters of today. Even though I said the game's near perfection, it doesn't mean that it's flawless. After all, perfection is an almost indescribable concept. Many later levels reuse environment assets, however, to avoid repetitiveness, some of the areas are changed and enemy types and spawns are also altered. On top of that, the difficulty gap from Heroic to Legendary is a vast chasm, and every now and again there are some slight bugs. These issues are almost completely null and void, and to a degree help add soul to the game. Halo Combat Evolved exists in a category of video game that very, very few others can ever claim. Not only just being a killer app for one system, but the first system of an entire lineage. Halo set up the expectation of what Xbox even means, and as a result the two are inseparable. To me, art is almost like extracting a piece of your soul and presenting it to an audience. Sure, you could argue that many modern games are art, but I find so many of them feeling like manufactured objects. They were made by people, but if you told me they were made by a computer, I would believe you. There's no character, no soul. I find this truth to be extended into most media nowadays. Sure, films and television are art, but there's a clear difference between something that was crafted as a project of passion and a project of profit. It's an amalgamation of all these elements that makes Combat Evolved. The soul, the craft, the care, passion, its impact, and its importance. Halo is art, Halo is timeless, and Halo will continue.